Hey guys, Matt here with another Gyro conversation. I am standing in Tianyi Square. Funny story, I used to live, when I first moved to China, just a little ways down this road. And when I moved to China, I didn't speak Chinese, I didn't know. I was a stranger in a strange land. And I remember the first time I walked here, it felt like miles and miles and miles. And when I arrived here, it certainly didn't look quite like this. A lot of these buildings are a bit new. Not this one. This one I actually had my one of my offices was in this building right here, this tall Coke can looking one. It looks like a can of Coke or something. But I remember as I lived in China, my world opened up as I stayed here in Ningbo. I explored more, and eventually this place became my home. Tianyi Square became the place I went regularly to grab a cup of coffee or do some shopping and things like that. Anyways, that sort of ties into this topic of today's conversation, which is how traveling has changed my perception of certain things. And I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to break it into a series, because traveling has changed my perspective on so many things so profoundly that if I was to just do a top 10 list, I don't think I would do justice to the each particular topic and how it's changed my perception of things. Just like when I moved to China, I felt like I was such a stranger in a strange land. Now I feel very welcome and it's very comfortable here, and Tianyi Square is like a home away from home. Literally, because my home now is way far away. So this was my home, away from where my home is now, and way far away from my home, which is in the United States. So today I'm going to talk about war and my perception of war and how it's changed via travel. So this episode is going to be about that. War is pointless. The more you exist outside of your home country, if it's in the business of war, the more you realize that it's really a smokescreen for profiteers, for agitators, and it's always under the guise of a moral necessity. Now, obviously, that statement has its caveats, right? I mean, obviously, in the days of Hitler, there were certain reasons for war to come into play, to make sure that things didn't get too out of hand, make sure that there was justice for the global population. But I would say more broadly, war is just pointless. And I kind of learned that a lot when I moved to China. That was my first step in understanding how futile the idea of war is. Because when I moved here, obviously the tensions right now, as I record this video, between China and the United States is very high. But when I moved here 10, 15 years ago, started traveling to China, it was also somewhat high. It was strange. China was the communist country, and that's communism bad. You need to watch out for communism. You need to watch out for socialism. There's all these bad words that were created. Socialism is another video I want to do, actually. My perception of socialism has changed tenfold after I've traveled a bit. But I moved to China, and I was fearful because I had been seeded with this fear of the other. It's a nice thing to placate a population. If you're afraid of everything going on across the ocean, then we might be able to get away with corruption and things in our backyard, and the neighbors won't know, or the people in the house won't know. So I started thinking, especially after I lived in China, I made Chinese friends, I went to Chinese places, I've met Chinese soldiers in military, I've met Chinese police officers, and any manner of things. I lived here for 10 years. I started realizing that why was I bred to dislike China? Why was I bred to worry about China? And I started questioning things. Travel is a great way to start questioning your hardened, hard-coded ideologies. And that's what it started to do. I started existing outside of the country that I was born in. And America in particular, I mean, we as Americans are bred on the idea of being proud of fighting, being proud to sacrifice yourself for a greater good. Hello. But what is that greater good? The greater good is a very, very broad topic, and it can be loosely defined. I think America has been a bit damaged by having such noble causes as World War I and II to fight against, that we were indoctrinated into the idea that all war must be good. Because World War I and World War II, those were fighting against real enemies. And what happened was we started growing our military-industrial complex. People started to turn the other cheek when military budgets started to get inflated. If you didn't agree with the war, well, that was just not your patriotic duty. You were going against the grain, and so that was a bad thing. I felt that way too. So when World War II ended and we started getting involved in all sorts of Middle East conflicts and things like this, seeding future wars, because you bomb a wedding and you might make one of the bystanders that survive a future terrorist. You start to empathize with people who might have an anger towards America. What are you doing invading our country? You're just creating more problems in the future. And I started realizing, holy shit. We're just self-propagating the thing that we should be stamping out, you know? Instead, we're seeding it in so many cases. I talked with people from Turkey. I have friends from Iraq. I have friends from Pakistan. I have friends all over the Middle East. I have friends of all different races, all different cultures, all different religions. And I realized that war was a means to make profit and means to control populace instead of a means to promote peace. And it was sad because it challenged my worldview. But it's important to challenge your worldview, right? The moment that things really clicked with me was when I cycled. I'm normally on a cycle tour riding around the world. The moment that it really hit home for me was when I rode through Vietnam and then Cambodia. The Vietnam War was a load of shit. And America lost that war. So when I was riding through Vietnam, I was riding through it from the perspective of what would happen if we just let communism reign? What would happen if a country that we deemed such a danger, such a profound danger to this world, that we need to go in there and invade them? We need to take them over. We need to teach them a lesson. What would happen if that side won? That's an example of Vietnam. That's a prime example of what would happen if our effort of war failed to defend democracy, to promote Americanism, to right a wrong. And you know what? Vietnam's great. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. The people there are happy. COVID, they kicked its ass. Buildings there, brands are there. Looks like very nice place to live. In fact, I know a lot of people that live in Vietnam and they're very happy there. So what the hell was the reason we went there to fight in the first place? A lot of lives were lost on both sides. A lot of hate was fomented. I walked down the streets. Is that hate still there? No. You remove the threat of war, you remove the anger and the hatred. It was shocking. I visited a prison where Vietnamese kept us, Americans, and where the French kept the Vietnamese. It's just a cycle. It's just a cycle. Occupiers hating the locals, and then the locals hating the occupiers, and it just goes around. It's a vicious, vicious cycle. And so I realized by looking around Vietnam, what are we doing? What is war? I started to feel like I identified more with the peaceniks in the 70s in the United States than with my own brothers and sisters that I grew up with in Detroit, you know, because they were all kind of that indoctrination. We always thought the hippies were crazy. The hell, man, you spouting all this peace talk? War is what fixes problems. When I started realizing war is what causes problems. I really realized that when I cycled out of Vietnam into Cambodia. If you guys don't know the story of Cambodia, just check the movie out, The Killing Fields. We created... Now, we weren't fighting Cambodia, but our war in Vietnam allowed us to bomb the neighbors of Vietnam. And we bombed the shit out of Cambodia, so much so that we disrupted their society. They were doing okay. As a bystander, sort of like when we drone bombed those weddings. Obama did a lot of bombing. Trump did a lot of bombing. Americans, we have not had a real good, peaceful administration in quite some time, maybe ever. But we went in and we bombed the shit out of Cambodia, trying to get the Vietnamese who were cutting around that country and kind of coming in from the other side. And we disrupted Cambodia so much so that the fragile society they had fell apart. It welcomed Pol Pot. Pol Pot came in there, took everybody with glasses, everybody that was part of the system of growth, any intellectuals, killed them. Massacred them. Millions. I think it was something like 20% of the population was part of a genocide. The situation in Cambodia was brutal. And completely our cause. Americans caused that. We have a lot of blood on our hands. And it continues to create the opportunities for that blood on their hands. It's like nobody learns a damn lesson. And Americans who are still caught in that bubble, that patriotic circle, they think war is still the answer to a lot of the world's problems. I think things are changing a little bit, but it's crazy. The other aspect that I learned, and this is a huge one too, by no means does it supersede the amount of lives lost and blood given to the process of promoting war, but financially it is a sucker. The amount of money that America spends on war that they think is important and necessary to police the world has totally cut us off at the knees. Now, the amount of money that we spent on and continue to spend on military, we will spend as much on the military in a moment's notice with zero kickback as we could if we were to put high-speed trains in America, or invested in education, or invested in green power energy jobs that would end up providing a lot more opportunity to Americans than going off and fighting wars. And we wouldn't be fomenting future wars by stirring up the pot, trying to get oil, trying to get resources, and all this kind of jazz. China, for example, has not invested as much in their military as much as you might want to think. There's been stories out there that says, oh, China building up its military. China has a very, 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 very long way to go before they can compete with America on that end. Think about that for a second. I didn't think about it as much in America as I did when I left. The fact that we are voluntarily pouring money out of our hardworking pockets into bomb makers, military industrial complex corporations, big oil, big industry that's like Halliburton that goes into these countries that we end up destroying to try to save them and bring back democracy. Look at Iraq. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Yemen, look at the Middle East. Look at Saudi Arabia, our best buddies. Our best buddy partner in crime. Literally. Who were the 9/11 attackers mostly from? It was from Saudi Arabia. Right there, you should see that there's some craziness afoot. It's such a financial windfall. And we are just unwittingly playing into the game of war. And I didn't learn as much about it. I didn't come about face on this issue until I really started getting out and traveling. And I hope this video helps to maybe broaden your horizons a little bit. Maybe you can inherit some of my points of view, because I think it is dangerous to continue down this road as a society thinking that it's our patriotic duty to continue policing the world and being warmongering countries. It's a perpetuating cycle. And the only winners in this game, the only ones really, are the companies that have been put in place to feed the machine. Anyways, that's just a thought. What the hell do we want to change China? Why would we? There's talk about warring with China. Why? Why? Now, that's one more thing before I go. I live in this country. People say it's communist. I mean, I personally think they should change the CCP, China's Communist Party, because it's not really. It's a capitalist. It's more capitalist than it's ever been. But this whole idea of wanting to change other countries' systems, because why? Think about it, really. Why? Everybody here is pretty happy. Why would you want to forcibly enforce your way? The only reason that I think it is if this form of leadership in this country is killing people, like in mass. Even in Xinjiang, you're not killing people in mass. Xinjiang has, I have a lot to say about that. There's some crazy shit going on there. But China is trying a certain tact that I might not agree with regards to controlling Muslim extremism. They're certainly not taking all the Muslims and throwing them into ditches or bombing weddings or doing all sorts of things. You see what I'm saying here? There's a lot of people doing a lot of things wrong. Should China invade America? Do they have a right to invade America? America sure does stir the pot in a lot of places. But we don't think, Chinese people don't think that. So why would America think it has the right to go to other countries, waste all that money, waste all those resources, create future terrorists and future enemies, when you could just wait it out? Look at Vietnam. Vietnam is a fantastic example, and it wasn't until I walked through that place and realized, what the hell are we doing here? Anyways, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna get some lunch. I hope that wind noise hasn't been too. Woo! That's a breezy one. Hope that wind noise hasn't been too bad. But yeah, this is a very nice place, Satini Square. We need to fight this place. We need to stop this sort of thing from happening. Crazy. And okay, that's my final thought. That was where I was kind of sidetracked. So communism. Is communism taking hold in America? What are we really afraid of? Are we that weak as a society of Americans that we're afraid the infection of communism is going to come and take over America? Has it yet? Vietnam, they won. Did they spread their communism throughout the world? No. Different societies choose different methods to run their society and culture. We chose a democracy that's being polluted by corruption in America, and China is a communist turned capitalist society with their own corruption as well. Which one deserves to be overtaken by the other? Forcibly, by war? I would say neither. I would hope that you would too. Thanks guys, Jayo. If you want to listen to some more of these kind of rants and things, more personal stuff, I have a Patreon where I do an audio podcast. You can listen to that. I have all sorts of ways that you can contribute to the journey. I have an Instagram that I'm trying to ramp up as well, and a bunch of social media things. Sooner or later, I'm going to be back on the trike cycling around the world. But until then, I'm sharing my life here in China with you. So take it easy. Peace. Make love, not war. And yeah, if you haven't traveled to some of these countries because you're afraid or something, you'll be sorely disappointed, and it might just change the way you think.